If you crack first, Dave, it won't make you any less of a man.
I'm nowhere near cracking.
Neither am I, my friend.
Dave. And Matthew, what is it now? For God's sake, no one's smoking, okay?
But nothing!
You know what we need around here is an anti-whining ordinance.
So just sip your sniveling little lip and haul your skinny ass out of here!
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. I'm a few days behind on this one, but I had some weird stuff happen over the weekend that I had to address, had to kind of change some schedules up. But I'm here to talk about the Year of Valiant. Now, me personally, I would say the Year of Valiant is 2012, and then the era or age, new age of Valiant is from 2012 to 2017, 2018, somewhere in there. But Valiant Comics themselves say 2022 is going to be the Year of Valiant, kind of celebrating their 10-year anniversary as far as the relaunch. Under Dinesh Shamdasani, who obviously is no longer with Valiant. It was ended up being bought out from underneath him. I believe he was bought out from DMG Entertainment, who wanted to take the properties to the big screen. They saw value in taking Bloodshot, Exo Man of War, Ninja K, Shadow Man, Harbinger, probably Archer and Armstrong, those kind of properties, not only to movies, but streaming and television. Has not worked out for them very much because they essentially have destroyed the characters for the last 3 years. It's shocking the level of decrease in quality that you saw from Valiant Comics the moment Dinesh Shamdasani and Warren Simmons, who would have been the editor-in-chief, once they left and they were kind of bought out and it was time for them to move on. Obviously, they're a bad idea right now, but you know, it's tough seeing something like this, especially when you love something. And I do. And I'm not speaking hyperbole now. I love the Valiant Comics shared universe. As much as I like DC and Marvel, which I think they're fantastic when they're done right, those are great. But I think the Valiant universe is the best shared universe. And here's why. Because it's so small. Even when they were publishing their highest amount of comics in a year under Dinesh and Warren Simmons during Valiant, the most they would put out in a month was like 5, perhaps 6 comic books. So it was a really tight, really connected shared universe. Think about the X-Men line. The entire Valiant Comics shared universe is smaller than the X-Men line was before. I guess they're all going on hiatus and they're canceling a bunch of comic books. Think about how much easier it is when you have one guy that loves the property overhead of it with another guy underneath him that's really, and they're both firing on all cylinders, keeping the creative going really well and keeping just amazing stories coming out. And you can see how amazing a smaller shared universe can really work. And in my opinion, the Valiant Comics shared universe from 2012, it's like 2017, 2018, the moment the Valiant Comics died is Harbinger Wars 2, which is actually written by Matt Kent, who's doing Exo Man of War at the time. You can tell they did something weird there. Like, he was doing something with Exo Man of War, and then he's just like, I got to nope out and go back to Earth. And you could tell it came out of nowhere. The plans, whatever Harbinger War 2 was going to be under Dinesh and Warren Simmons was completely changed, and they had to bring Exo Man of War back. Matt Kim would have been the name writer at Valiant that was left over after they disappeared. And you could tell I guess he did the best that he could with what he had, but he had nothing. And that Harbinger Wars 2 is probably the worst comic book I've ever read from Matt Kent, and he is a fantastic writer. I went on a little bit of a rant there about how much I love Valiant Comics and how it died. I got more stuff to say, and I've got videos about it. I'll probably do a rant accidentally later on. Let's get back into the details of this thing. So 2022 will be a year-long celebration of Valiant Comics consisting of new launches, new creators, and return of fan-favorite characters, the formation of new teams, and the Valiant characters exploring beyond traditional publishing methods. What does beyond traditional publishing methods mean? Does that mean like webtoons, web comics potentially? Maybe going to an all-digital strategy for maybe a couple of titles? Does it mean flip books? Does it mean going with an entire line of graphic novels? I'm not really sure. You're going to have to define what beyond traditional publishing methods means. Now, this is what Valiant Entertainment publisher Fred Pierce had to say about the Year of Valiant 2022. So much is happening in Valiant's 2022 to bring our universe forward with the return of characters that fans continue to anticipate and love. There will be sci-fi, horror, comedy, and so much action that it will be hard to sit down as they're being read In addition to publishing, be on the lookout for games based on our characters, like Shadow Man Remastered, original graphic novels, prose novels, and perhaps items of a more cinematic nature from our great parent company, DMG Entertainment. The Valiant family is happy for everyone to join the excitement. So I imagine that's what they mean beyond traditional publishing. They are going to have a remastered Shadow Man game. I believe that was Acclaim. But that would have been, was that like Super Nintendo or something? It was a long time ago. Maybe that was NES. I'm not really sure. I'm playing a lot of retro games right now. Shadow Man's not one of the ones I'm interested in. We know Acclaim essentially destroyed the company the first time when they removed Jim Shooter. Ended up buying up the company and destroying all the properties as they try to turn it into, I don't know, a proof of concept for video games. That did not work out. Some original graphic novels, I mentioned that. Prose novels. Listen, these are all good ideas, right? It's a great idea. We're going to do some original graphic novels. Graphic novels are hot. You can see the book sector, the graphic novel sector of comic books is growing. There's nothing wrong with that, but we're going to do some prose novels. You can't sell a goddamn comic book right now. Why are you doing prose novels? You haven't figured out your own characters for the last 3 years. Yet you're going to go start writing or hiring some authors. They're going to take your direction and make prose novels about characters that everyone hates. The built-in audience for Valiant Comics prose books would be Valiant Comics fans, which I don't know if anybody else has noticed this. I've done a couple of videos about the sales of Valiant Comics lately. They left the building. There are no fans left. Their sales are down like 60% or more since DMG took over. It's crazy. They have had a couple successes, mostly #1 relaunches, like the Livewire #1. I think that was a really big success. By issue #3, it was an enormous failure. Well, what else? We had Bloodshot #1. When they messed up Bloodshot bad. They ended up I think in 8 issues they had 3 different writers because everyone kept leaving the title. They relaunched it with Tim Seeley with Brett Booth on art, and the movie was coming up, and they put a lot of promotion behind that. And yes, the very first issue sold like gangbusters, and then it just died off because Brett Booth's art wasn't enough to save Tim Seeley from himself. The Mendoza line of DC and Marvel Comics. That's as bad a writer as you can be at DC and Marvel and apparently keep your job. Well, 1 out of every 5 comic books is readable. Unfortunately, he did not get the character of Bloodshot. But they can't sell an Exo Man of War comic book, the flagship character for Valiant Comics. They can't sell an Exo Man of War comic book, but they're going to go do some prose novels. It's absolutely ludicrous. I went and I watched the Bloodshot movie. It's a pretty boring, generic 90s movie. It's not all that much to do with Bloodshot. I mean, there's a couple of characteristics and ideas that are certainly very prevalent in the very excellent Jeff Lemire run. Not a big fan of Lemire anymore, but his Bloodshot is absolutely worth checking out. And there's some stuff from there that's actually in the movies, but it's not done very well. I have no faith that Sony or whoever they're working with these days are going to be able to take any of these properties. We know the other one besides Bloodshot that has been talked about a lot is a Harbinger series on television or streaming. Harbinger's pretty cool. It's like the X-Men of Valiant Comics. It's a younger team of what do they call them? Psiots. That they kind of all have mutant powers, but it's different because you're in the Valiant universe. That's where Faith came from. But until these guys can make a comic book outside of Cullen Bunn's Shadow Man, which somehow they actually made one good comic book in the last 3 years. Some people would say Dan Abnett's Rye is good, but Rye is my favorite character. That's like my favorite story, and I can tell you right now, that man forgot to read the Rye before his because they don't exactly line up. But that one's actually readable, but for the most part, it's just been tripe. Show me you can make an Exo Man of War comic book and get people to buy it before you decide that you're going to go along with all these plans. Have you seen what Valiant Comics publishing has been for the last 2 years? Yes, we had the pandemic. Most every other publisher has returned back to normal if they're not exceeding what they were producing before that. Not Valiant. You will go 3 months in between an issue of Exo Man of War. They've started miniseries that they never completed. They never canceled it. It just never came out. What are we on? Issue number 2 of Ninja K? It launched like 5 months ago. They can't put out comic books on time right now. I'm pretty sure they're out of money. We know that they had to give up their offices in New York. I believe they were trying to sublet it. I don't know if that ever happened. I know they were showing that they were doing that. So they have a big hill to climb to make any of these characters important or marketable moving forward due to the mismanagement and all the morons that DMG kind of put in place. I don't know Fred Pierce, but I can tell you this. Valiant Comics, other than that Shadow Man comic book, which a Cullen Bunn Shadow Man is actually dope. Go read that sumbitch. It's really good. If you like horror-based superheroes, that's a damn good comic book. Everything else has been fucking unreadable, and I love Exo Beta War. That's my that's my dog right there. Now they are saying the Year of Valiant will kick off with the return of the critically acclaimed series, and it should be critically acclaimed, Shadow Man, on January 19th. They're kicking off the Year of Valiant with, the comic book that they were planning on publishing. It's so weak. The first chapter of Deadside War, an epic horror storyline that will see the return of Punk Mambo and other familiar faces from the Valiant universe. They try to do a Punk Mambo miniseries. You're not going to make that character big unless you can actually, get some sales and stuff and have people, invested. Like Punk Mambo is a difficult character to get into because when you look at the character on the page, you can tell how bad they smell. You know what I mean? The character just looks dirty, not in a good way. I don't know. There's a lot of really good characters. Obviously, you've got the Eternal Warrior and the Geomancer and all those kind of characters that kind of can go between the dead side and the regular world that you have. But they can't figure out how to get a Bloodshot comic book right, and they're going to do a big epic Deadside War. I'll give Cullen Bunn the benefit of the doubt. But I'll be shocked if Davis is still on the damn book when this thing kicks off. They can't keep an artist on a book anymore. Punk Mambo. Find a better character to get out there. We need a Ninja K book that's actually worth buying. The art on that was absolutely atrocious. We did also hear from Lisa Hawkins, senior editor. She would have been the other senior editor that was promoted at the same time as Heather Ontos, who was exited the building, which I think was probably a good idea on Valiant's part. Heather, of course, was brought in to bring in further Rolodex, to bring in some big name talent. That did not happen. There's videos on that. I don't want to talk about Heather Ontos. It's not really worth my time right here. Well, this is what Lisa Hawkins, senior editor, had to say. There's a bunch of quotes in the article in the video description. She says, the year starts off with the return of Punk Mambo and Shadow Man. It's such not a big deal. No one cares about that character. Faith in Harbinger. The Harbinger is another series that they're relaunching with. That's going to come out by the end of the year. I feel so bad for Jody. What's her name? Jody Hauser? I think it's Jody Hauser, who's been stuck with this stupid Faith character, and I don't know why. I guess they really want to have a body positive superhero. And back in the day when Faith was first introduced in Harbinger, the series, which is a pretty good series. It's not my favorite from Valiant. Like, Faith is actually pretty tolerable. Like, it's not the worst character in the world. Her nickname's Zephyr, which, I don't know. There's way too many fat jokes that are associated with that name. So they eventually removed that from the character, and they tried to spin her off as a big deal, and they gave her the most generic, lame-ass superhero uniform you could ever make because, I guess it would be easy to cosplay. It'd be easy to, to recreate the uniform. And they've tried to make Faith a thing since even Dinesh Shamdasani's time. And that's really the only thing they dropped the ball on. When you would look at the sales for Valiant Comics that they would launch in, like a new character or a miniseries or anything, you look at the sales, and if there was a fucking Faith comic, it would be down here. It would be half of everything else. It would be half of whatever the bottom was. Then you would find Faith. No one is bought into the character. No one cares about a body positive flying Zephyr character. It's just never worked out for him. I don't know why they're trying to reintroduce the character. I hope Jody Hauser doesn't get stuck with this character again. I feel so bad for her. She seems like a nice person. She's not like the greatest comic writer of all time, but she's not a bad comic book writer either. In fact, I would say over the last 2 or 3 years, the stuff she did on Star Wars is probably some of the best that they've done in the Marvel universe since the end of Charles Soule's Vader run. Like her Star Wars stuff was probably the best. And it's a low bar set, but there's definitely some stuff from Jodie Hauser. So please don't stick her with this stupid character again. Lisa Hawkins continues, and Classified to the pages of the Valiant universe, and that's just the start. I imagine the Classified is probably Toyo Harada. That's like the big villain, kind of not like Magneto, but you get what I'm saying, like the big superpowered Psyot villain. Maybe it's Toyo Harada. Maybe it's the Eternal Warrior. Makes a whole lot of sense. Gilad's such a really good character. Probably not Archer and Armstrong. There's some cool characters that they could reintroduce. Those are the ones that would just pump them in my head. It's got to be Toyo Harada. Without him, you don't have the big villain that you need. She continues. Full-on hero time comes next, coupled with mind-blowing sci-fi, bone-chilling horror, and laugh-out-loud humor. The laugh-out-loud humor stuff has to be Archer and Armstrong. Like that was their comic book. That was like their buddy comic book, like the buddy team up where you had this super-powered guy and it's like a normal dude that are in a duo. I don't love that series. It's perfectly fine, but I guess if you want to really buddy humor like a comic book, I'll go watch Lethal Weapon 2. You know what I mean? But she continues. Valiant has something to offer for everyone. They don't. That's the problem. That's why nobody's reading your comic books. That's why you're having to do these stupid initiatives. You can't sell an Exo Man and War comic. You can't sell a fucking Bloodshot comic book right now. And I guarantee you, after the first 2 issues of The Harbinger, you won't be able to sell that one either because you don't have something for everyone. That's the problem. That's what you're not realizing. Valiant used to be the place where they would Dinesh and Warren would go out there and find all the coolest talent out there. That's where they discovered Clayman as far as art. That's where they, Robert Venditti got his first ongoing series there. Matt Kent, of course, he'd already done Mind Management, but he came over and did some really cool series. Jeff Lemire got a pretty big break there early on in his career. Who else? Tomas Giorello did a lot of work with them. But they would go out there and they would find these really cool young creators. In fact, they paired Robert Venditti with Carrie Nord on that Exo Man War series. It was such a badass thing, but they don't find any new talent. It's the place for retread talent that never was to go and finally, get a paycheck again. And that's the problem. There isn't something there for everyone. There's something for nobody. And that's why their sales are so dismal. And Lisa Hawkins, as a senior editor, should realize that, as well as Fred Pierce, the publisher. Man, I've got a lot of rants. I'm sorry. This story is so small, but I really just love Valiant so much, and I'm very frustrated with it. Valiant has something to offer for everyone. I disagree. And 2022 is the year where this is no better place and time to rediscover or just plain discover what the Valiant universe is all about. I would love to rediscover the Valiant universe. I would love to return. I would love to fully invest in the entire line where they went back and did Valiant style event books where you get like one a year, you get like a few tie-ins, and they were just always dynamite, the best writer that they could have, really making their characters shine. And they would bring in the best, young, hottest talent to come in to Valiant Comics and really work with those characters and let them shine and let them get discovered by DC, Marvel, and other publishers. But they're going to have to convince me because this, obviously, this press release does not do it for me. Because I have no faith, pun intended, in Valiant Comics anymore. They destroyed something beautiful. Why? I have no idea. It looks to be sheer mismanagement on the part of DMG when they bought out Dinesh Shamdasani. I don't think they wanted him associated with the characters anymore because, he might have gotten more of the praise. It's a weird situation. So they bought out Dinesh, who obviously had bought Valiant when it was like worth nothing, and then relaunched the brand, built up the characters and the profile of the characters. And then DMG kind of bought in as a partner, I guess. And then they bought him out because they had an option to do that. So he got a big paycheck. And then they went to go do Bloodshot with Sony. You know what Sony did? Dinesh he made his own production company, and they hired his production company to like come over and tell him how to make the Bloodshot character. So it's clear that they were not impressed what Valiant Entertainment were telling them about the character. They went out and hired the guy that they had to buy out to come and consult on the damn film. So Sony saw the same thing as I did, that these guys they don't know the characters. So I want to believe. I want to buy in. I want to be a Valiant Comics fan again. Can Valiant Comics be great only under Jim Shooter and Dinesh Shamdasani? I don't believe that's the case. But I don't think it can be great under Fred Pierce, Lisa Hawkins, and the ownership of DMG Entertainment, because we've seen nothing out of them. One comic book in 3 years that I consider, as far as the Valiant Comics lore, as far as quality, that's actually good, and that's the Shadow Man comic. Everything else has been basically putrid. So I didn't mean to rate. Well, it was going to happen. I just love Valiant so much, and it's just heartbreaking when you love something and you really invested in it. It's the coolest thing in the world, and not everybody else knows about it. You're like, oh, you haven't been reading X-Men War? You're a moron. That's the best comic book out on the market. Oh, you haven't been reading Ninja K? That's the best Batman comic that you can read right now. And then to have it just die in one moment and just atrophy and decompose in front of your face as they do relaunch after relaunch and initiative after initiative and drive every they had a small readership to begin with and just drive them all away. They did the Marvel and DC strategy, but they didn't have the built-in fan base and the credibility of the characters to be able to execute it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. It's the year of Valiant in 2022. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm skeptical. Let's just put it that way. I'm thinking cynical.